Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the recorded version of Communications and Cigars. I am your host, John Crook, and thank you very much for tuning into this episode, even though it is recorded. We took a look at it. Unfortunately, life gets busy sometimes for everybody, and that's kind of what sort of happened this week here. So that's why I still wanted to get an episode out there, but I figured, now's a great time to kind of do that kind of like carry catch-all thing, and that's why tonight's recorded episode is Communications and Cigars Hot Mess. Yeah, well, maybe I should have rethought the title, but here's why. Tonight's episode is going to be just a little tidbit of kind of a little bit of few things here on there. We're going to talk about some kind of follow-up questions that people have had from past shows, as well as kind of going and taking a real quick look at something that I bought that was at an unusual location, but it's really cool for a bunch of different things on there. So that's what we're going to kind of do. I've kind of had some, I don't want to say listener mail or just comments or whatever that wanted to do a little bit more than basically trying to, I don't want to say like trying to fit it all into an episode or an email or something. It just kind of was a little bit of a tidbit on there. So that's what kind of tonight's episode is going to be all about here. Now, one of the things I do want to go ahead and say is I do want to say thank you to the supporters, the people that have that share my information on there. I got a lot of great feedback, and I thank everybody so much for demystifying DMR and then demystifying DMR part 2, where we talked about programming. I had a lot of people that said, oh my God, this clicked. This really makes sense. Thanks for doing it. They kind of followed along. I had a few people say, hey, John, can you show Motorola software? Because I know friends that have Motorola's or Kenwoods. I did it on the software just because I'm not 100% sure on how Mother M and Kenwood really like people looking and doing their software. I have legit copies. I've paid my money. I've paid my dues. But sometimes it's a little weird thing on there. With that also being said is that I do, like I said, do want to say thank you to everybody that does tune in, that does support the channel. We do get some funding from JJK Communications, which does help us provide and buy some equipment and stuff on there. In addition to that, I'm not really seeking monetary donations, anything like this. I do this channel as kind of like a fun kind of thing on there, but also too some educational stuff on there. I do have new episodes that are going to be coming out here pretty quick live with guests once I can kind of get the schedule all done, because once we get into May and everything just kind of gets busy this time of the year, and that's really what it is. But I also too wanted to, like I said, upload a recording of a show tonight, because I did have a few people that thought that I was done with the show, that I was done. I stopped doing the show, that kind of thing abruptly. No, it wasn't. I was just sick. I wasn't feeling well. I encourage everybody, you take time for yourself. Okay. Whether it be the hobby, whether it be whatever. I have a good friend, that's going through some health challenges himself, and he's kind of taking a step back from a few things. And he says, you know what? He's like, I got to do it for myself. I love my hobby, love my friends, love doing things, love volunteering and stuff like that on there. But when it's a high stress kind of thing, it doesn't work that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at what tonight's episode is about. But even more so, before we go ahead and do that, you got an idea for the show, comments, questions, there's the email right there. Communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. So once again, communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. And then you can go ahead and send your show ideas, those kind of things like that, and all that kind of jazz about there. So what are we going to talk about? And I'm just kind of looking at my list over here, because there's a lot of things that people wanted, and I'm trying to narrow it down. But it sometimes is not that easy to do. But I do have a few things right away. So coming back, we'll start off first of all, coming back. God, I'm trying to think how long ago it was. It was one of the Tech Bench ones that I went along and looked at interfacing one of these for a mobile repeater. And what I did on that case was I said, hey, here's the deal. I wanted to interface this device with a mobile radio. And the reason I wanted to interface this device with a mobile radio is because when you took one of these, I was able to interface it. So there's a connector on there. Okay, on there's a little BNC connector, but there's a data connector for it. And what I was able to do then is able to interface to radio. And now what I could do is I made my own mobile repeater. But what's even better yet is this little device actually is a DMR capable. This one is VHF. It's actually capable of 10 watts. So it's kind of cool on there, but it's designed to be a data radio. But what is data? What is a data radio? Data radio is nothing more than sending ones and zeros. Okay. But what it did is it sends the data from right there from the plug. So it didn't really matter if it's actually data or instead of the input for the data, if we put voice into it. So this has worked out really well. But a lot of people asked me, said, John, what device was this? And this is a Maxon SD-671D as in David. Okay, so SD-671D. It's made by Maxon. There's kind of the model number you can kind of see there. They do make a UHF version. The VHF version actually only goes down to 150. But if you're smart and you know the software and stuff, you can kind of hex edit it or hack it down into the amateur band on there. But I like to use this actually for public safety purposes or business purposes, because then I could use one of my mobile, or general frequencies on there, and I can use it and talk back. And the great part about it is if I only have a VHF radio and this is a VHF device, I can set it up to connect to a UHF radio, and you got all these wonderful possibilities. But a lot of people asked about that. If you're interested in, hey, where did I get it? Where did I buy from? What's the cost and everything like that on there? That's another time here. I'll pull up the email address. Shoot me an email. Here, I can go ahead and get you some information. Not really that expensive. You're probably going to be paying the cost of a good high quality portable, for these things. But I will tell you what, it's totally worth it in every way, shape, or form. Totally worth it. So Maxon SD-671D on there. All right. Next thing that people asked is, said, John, I was looking at your software and it didn't look like any familiar software. What kind of radio did you use or stuff like that on there? So I said, I figured, hey, I'll go ahead and talk about it. I was actually demoing this radio here. It's called Xera. Is the name of the company. It's an EP8100. It is a DMR radio, but it's more than DMR, and that's the reason why I got it. Really, is because not only could you do what they call DMR Tier 2, if you remember from the episode, that's just a standard conventional repeater from here to the repeater and then back out. But it also is capable of doing DMR trunking. So trunking with the different modes that we talked about. But then it's also available to do what they call MPT 1327. So that is an analog analog trunking voice format on there. And that's what I really kind of liked on it. It's a good solid radio. I mean, it's nice kind of display if you can kind of see it there, washed out a little bit. Okay. But anyways, allows you to, it's got a lot of features in there that I really like, on there. And, I always like the chirps, on there. So it, I knows when I'm keying up and everything. Has GPS built into it. Excuse me. See, I'm still not even getting over it. GPS built into it. You could send GPS, text messaging, all that kind of fun stuff that's in DMR. But that is a software that I actually used for it that day. So just kind of a, hey, the radio. People said, what other radios do I use for DMR and other purposes? Excuse me. So exactly, Fusion. I use Fusion radios, obviously, made by Yaesu. DMR, I use some Xeras. I have in the past used some Anytones. I've used some Alinco DMR radios. I've used, my biggest ones I usually have are the Kenwood DMR radios that are on there. A lot of people also ask, what kind of radios do you use for other things, for public safety? Well, I kind of do use, and I have this one here, I kind of do use the Kenwood, E.F. Johnson kind of ones here. This is a VP 6000. I guess the reason that I'm bringing this up and trying to answer this question is because there's a wide variety based on the features and stuff that you're looking in for a radio. We did an episode probably over a half a year ago when the show started out, where we said, what radio is what you want, what features do you want in there? And a lot of these radios are the features that I want on there. Now, some, like this new one here, is a little bit of a play radio. I'm going to not hide or deny that fact in any way, shape, or form. But others for me are really functional usage, and I really like them and stuff that are on there. So that's why I like to, you gotta have a good sampling, a little bit of everything on there. And that's kind of one of really the most important parts about when you're looking at radios and stuff like that, is to see, hey, what is it? What, how can I do this? How can I do this? This kind of thing. Does it have what I want and stuff? And, unfortunately, sometimes with this day and age, like this Xera, I was like, it's really interesting and stuff. You know what? I'm just gonna take and plop some money down and buy one, and just call it good and see where it goes from there. And so far, I like the radio. Not really much more to say on that, but I really do like the radio. Does have a lot of features on there. So that's kind of a couple of those questions on there. One other question I had, which kind of played into the last 2 episodes we had, demystifying DMR. One of us said, John, why does, and it even happened on here, you kind of heard it, why is there like a chirp tone, and why is there like an overtone when dealing with a lot of DMR stuff? And that's actually a pretty good question, because, lots of times people hear a key up tone. Okay. And then give a second. Okay. That kind of second tone. People are like, well, why is there a Roger beep and stuff on there? There really isn't a Roger beep. What comes down to it is that when you're on DMR and you're keying a repeater, you need to know you have access to the repeater, because remember, a repeater is time slotted. So when you key up, you hear that chirp. That chirp is telling me as a user, guess what? I am able to go ahead and talk now. Because if I couldn't contact the repeater, the radio wouldn't hear it, or maybe I'd be in a fringe area where I can't hear the repeater. What's going to end up happening then is it's going to go ahead and it's going to bonk out sometimes, or it's going to say repeater not found or no connect or something like that on there. Now, people said, what is that extra kind of chirp at the end there? That end there, that is actually what they call the call end tone or group end tone. Now, what happens in DMR radios is that when you key up, you're on that talk group. Some repeaters are set up to hold that talk group on that time slot for just a little bit. And what that second chirp or beeping kind of noise there was to let me know that the conversation is finished, that the talk group has dropped the system. So for an example, if I was on time slot 1, talk group 1 here, I talk. Hang on, I'll turn it back on. And I'm going to talk, and we're going to have a conversation and everything like that. What I can do then is when I key up and everything like that, I know I get my chirp. Hey, test 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what ends up happening is the repeater's still waiting, listening for another key up on talk group 1. But when you hear that second chirp tone, that's telling me that, hey, the repeater has dropped. That talk group is now, that time slot's back open for any talk group to use. That's kind of what that tone is. And for some people, they like to hear that tone. Some people, they don't. But it can be quite confusing. I will tell you that, hands down, it can be quite confusing, because you're like, wait a minute, why am I getting all these chirps and these beeps and these boops? In addition, when you're talking about a DMR radio, you actually have a couple different types of chirps that are on there. First of all, you have your key up tone. Then you have your call hang tone, or group hang tone, I should say. Then you have a private call hang tone to let you know that the private call has ended on there. So a lot of different things that are on there in order to help you as a user understand that operation or functionality on there. Now, the last thing we're going to kind of talk about in tonight's shorter episode is something that I was walking around in a store, and it was a very unlikely store that you would have thought that I would have seen this, but guess what? I seen it and what it is. And the store is Duluth Trading Company. Yes, there was a dramatic pause there. So yes, Duluth Trading Company is where I bought this. Now here's this piece of device right here. Turn it a couple different ways. And here's the unique part about it. You know what this device is? I bought it to make an antenna, or help make an antenna, because this is a wire bender. That is correct, a hard wire bender. Now I was trying to think, what would be a situation to have hard wire? Well, make an antenna or something like that on there. But as you can kind of see here, you can kind of take it, and I mean, this is a piece of wood, but you could see you would be able to put the wire in there. Let me hold it up a little bit better and bend it. Or more importantly, you have some of these bends here, so you can take hard wire like for an antenna or like a radio or something, and you can actually bend it. Now, in addition to that, it's kind of like, well, wait, what? You know, like that doesn't make sense and stuff on there. I know it didn't, and it was relatively cheap. I think it was like under $10 or something. Yeah, under $10. But now what I can do is like, I've always wanted to make an egg beater antenna. If anybody's had any good ideas for egg beater antennas, please let me know. But by having that egg beater antenna, it kind of, kind of curves and kind of sloops down here. I'm always trying to figure out, how can I bend that wire? How can I do that? Well, guess what? This is a device I think that is going to go ahead and help me on there, be able to bend the wire. And you see, you got a couple slots, you can put it in there and just kind of bend it like at a 90 degree, or you could take and you can kind of, there's actually different size gauge wire in there that you'll be able to put it. You can kind of curve on there too. You got a triangle to kind of make a nice bend there. But I thought this was kind of interesting because it really allows you to do that. Now, here's the other part here too, is it gives you these inserts, and these inserts allow you to put them in there and bend in the different functionality too of there. So really, like under $10, these two screw holes are like if you wanted to mount it on a bench or something like that. And then, like I said, you got these little metal pins here that go into these holes here to allow you to really make and bend those kind of things on there. And I just thought that's an interesting and useful tool, especially if you start to getting into antennas and you want to use a little more stiffer wire or something that you need a little more rigidity to. This is where that's going to go ahead and be on there. So really kind of cool tool there. And I don't work for Duluth Trading Company or anything, but lots of times I go in there and, obviously I like their clothes and stuff, but sometimes they have some really cool gadgets in there. And it's amazing the type of gadgets that you can actually go ahead and find out in there. So that's kind of a little bit about it on there. And like I said, amazing tool. I really like that. Alrighty. Well, you know what? That's it for tonight's recorded episode. Short, sweet, simple, to the point. I know it's kind of short. I don't even really have anything that really bends my antenna. Or you know what? Let's do it. We can't do that. You know what really bends my antenna? That my episode was too short tonight. So I just love that picture, that video. But no, I don't really have anything bends my antenna. I will tell you this. Over the last few weeks and stuff like that, have had a chance to kind of just sit back and do something that I like to do kind of in my world, which is I like to people watch. Not like that creepy stalker, hey, how's it going, looking through the windows at night. But like, going to, I live near Minnesota for the Mall of America. But just kind of going and people watching and seeing how people react and everything like that. And I will tell you this. Whatever you're doing for your hobby, not just radios, but I guess it kind of applies to radios because it's communications, all right, here and cigars. But whatever it is, make sure you're treating your fellow person nice, okay? Understand that, and I see this happen a lot, and one of my first episodes talked about it, where, a lot of people have a lot of information, but to the point where you got where you're at today, for the point where I'm at today, there's people that were at the beginning points too. We're not all born with radio knowledge. We're not born with whatever we do in our world. We have to learn. We have to do certain things like that on there. So with that being said, keep that in mind, especially when you're trying to help people out. I see it the most, obviously, in this hobby, this communication field, where you have someone that comes in strutting their stuff like they know everything about radios. But guess what? They didn't know everything. They weren't born with it, okay? It took time to do that. Don't be afraid to share your knowledge. Don't be afraid to go ahead and do that extra work or something like that to help the people. I could tell you hands down from my personal experience that, you know what? You never know when you're going to be training your boss. You never know when, in your public safety, you never know when you're going to be training your next lieutenant or captain or hell for that matter, even the chief. Okay. Been there, done that. Okay. The biggest thing is that, he who has the most knowledge has the most power. That's stupid. Don't even go down that road on there. Just remember to help out your fellow man, fellow woman here, and especially in this hobby. This hobby is going to be so great. Okay. This business can be so great. The usage of radios can be so great. Lots of different aspects to it. But you know what? It only takes one person to kind of screw things up or make things that don't go right. And that's what kind of causes a problem on there. So instead of what really bends my antenna, here's some words of good wishes and all that kind of stuff on there. So I hope you had, we're kind of getting back into that springtime. People are going to start going out. People are going to start doing things. I hope you had the best winter that you could. Winter seems to be staying around here once again a little bit. but soon we're going to be able to get out, start working on projects again. I got a bunch of projects I'm working on, so I'm going to be looking forward to getting out and doing some of these things. Plus, I got travel coming up and everything, so lots of big things are happening. But until then, thank you for tuning in tonight on Monday night here. Remember to always go ahead and check our channel every Monday night at 8 p.m. on there. If we do a live episode, we try to get that information out there earlier. But once again, tonight's recorded, so it's just going to be uploaded. So, you know what? Take care. 73, stay safe, and remember, if you got them, smoke them and enjoy them.